Welcome to Toy-polloi.
Hello and welcome to another video from toy-polloi. Today we're going to take a look at the Micronauts Series 2 Pharoid figures. In 1977, Micronauts, as it's known in the UK and US, had been going for a good year, and the second wave of figures and vehicles was released. And in this wave were the Pharoids. As you can see in front of me, we have 3 Pharoids. The Pharoids came with sarcophaguses that the figures could sit inside, and each one was colour-coded to match the figure. So here we have the blue sarcophagus that matches the blue figure here. Now these figures were essentially remakes of figures from the Microman toy line, and the Microman toy line actually had 4 different Pharoids, and they were called Microman Command Series 2 figures. So we are missing one. As the UK and US version, we're missing one figure. And there are some other little features in these figures that we didn't get that passed on from the Japanese versions. If you look closely at the sarcophaguses here, this is a second issue version of the sarcophagus, which just has some little hieroglyphs on the bottom. But the original very first releases that came out in the UK and US, and all of the Japanese versions, have actual Japanese writing on it, as you can see here, and this says Microman Command in Japanese. So if you're collecting in the UK, you're more often than not going to find a sarcophagus with the little hieroglyphs on here. Now these figures are the same size as the Time Traveller figures and have the same sort of amounts of joints and sort of actions. They also come with a few extra little features. They come with wings that are detachable from the legs and can also be held in the hand to sort of look like guns, but they're supposed to be wings attached to the legs. And on the chest plate here, the chest plates are not as they're not removable like the ones on the Time Traveller figures, I don't think. Let me just try. No, they're not. They're fixed on. That's what I thought. But the midsection of them actually glows in the dark. As you can see, there's a little bit of plastic there, which has a picture of a little Egyptian face on there that actually glows in the dark, so that's quite a cool little feature. There's one other change that happened from the very first releases to the later releases. This guy on the right here, you can see, has much more of a sort of, well, he's got much more of a sort of 70s style haircut. For later versions of the figures, they replaced the heads with the Space Glider head, which was from another figure in the line, and you can see here that the face looks completely different. So there's quite a good running change there. If you want to get the variants of these figures, the early versions have this smaller head, and they're much harder to find. Another thing that we were shortchanged on with regards to the Micronauts UK and US releases was the fact that in Japan all these figures had names. For me, growing up, I just knew them as Pharoids, and the fact you had a blue one, a grey one and a red one. But in Japan they had names. So the blue one was called Sheriff, the red one was called Sander, and the grey one was called Sammy. And the one that we're missing that was never released in the UK was a yellow and green one with a clear sort of green plastic for most of the body. He was called Smith. So I'm not quite sure why they never bothered to give them names here in the UK. They never really gave them much story at all. I only ever knew them as sort of little space figures, but in Japan all the figures had names. If we take a look at one and compare it to a Time Traveller, you can see that they are essentially the same construction. The lower legs have been changed and modified to be a bit more sort of chunky, and they actually have little tabs on the back so you can attach more things to them. And also the chest pieces, which are removable on the Time Travellers and that you can swap around. On the Pharoids, they're actually sort of fixed in place. But really, on the whole, they're pretty similar figures. And obviously the Pharoids fit in all the same ships that the Time Travellers do. The figure is held in the sarcophagus using a little peg on the back of the back panel, as you can see here. This is the same fixing that's on the Time Traveller figures, so you can actually fit Time Travellers into these sarcophaguses as well. The one thing you do have to do is to take the wings off the legs of the figures and put them in his hands, because if they're in his legs then there isn't enough space to close the front panel. But that's not a problem, and they do fit in the hands quite well. And as you can hear, he holds in place pretty nicely for storage. In 1999, Takara's did start reissuing the Microman line in Japan, so some of these figures you can get as reissues. This Takara one here is the 1999 reissue, but they're very hard to tell apart from the original ones. The only reason you can tell this one is a reissue is because it's so clean and unplayed with. The other two that I have in my collection have been played with a lot, so the chrome is starting to wear. And these you can get carded for fairly sort of cheap prices, so they're worth picking up if you ever see them. I do tend to think that we were a little bit shortchanged here in the UK when it came to Micronauts. The Microman line of toys had an awful lot lot of figures to it, but we were very sort of limited in what we got. Mego and Airfix tended to sort of pick and choose, so we only got a few specialised ones, which is a little bit of a shame because there are an awful lot more figures to collect. So I hope my review of the Micronauts Pharoids has been interesting to you, and thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching toy-polloi. Subscribe for more great videos. You can also follow toy-polloi on Twitter and Facebook.